Ladies and gentlemen, to introduce this afternoon's keynote session, please welcome President and Chief Executive Officer, Cushman & Wakefield, Edward Forst.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we have a great afternoon, evening, and a start to this tremendous week. And thanks for the opportunity to be with ULI. I have to say, it's a bit daunting to be here, to be the warm-up act for really one of the famous rock stars in the history of business, Jamie Dimon, who's done for JPMorgan what Mick Jagger did for the Stones. In fact, this is probably as good as it gets to introduce Jamie. Now, while it's true there were some unforgettable acts for the Stones, some of you may love Rocket 88. Freddie Randall, any hands? Rocket 88? Nobody on the iPod, okay. There were some others, though, that were more famous and happy. The Beatles, the Beach Boys, James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and on. And on to Jamie. Jamie, who started his career at American Express in 1982 as the assistant to the president, and over the course of 3 decades held just about every senior job at major firms, including Travelers, Salomon Smith Barney, Sidcorp, Bank One, and for the last decade leading JPMorgan Chase. And since the moment he arrived at the firm in 2004, he has led its transformation. And it's one of the best run companies in the world. When he was named CEO, JPMorgan had a market cap of $76 billion, and today it's almost 3 times that. But more importantly than the mathematics around it, Jamie is a leader who cares. He cares about getting out into the field, he cares about his clients, he cares about his customers, he cares about his people, because he wants to build and reinforce the right culture at his firm. He also wants to learn firsthand from these experiences. And I'll tell you, in one of what I think is the ultimate anecdote about corporate leadership, about a Wall Street exec really getting out in the field, Jamie has literally gotten on buses and done several road trips, including one 1,200-mile road trip on a bus from Seattle to San Diego, and another 550-mile trip in Florida. Now, folks, that's 1,800 miles, bus miles. That's not what any of us are used to. And he took along some key leaders, and they visited branches, operations centers, all throughout Florida, in some off-the-path kinds of locations, like the credit card center in Lake Mary, Florida, population 14,000. Along the way, Jamie cataloged meetings with 5,000 employees and hundreds of clients, from retail customers to Fortune 500 CEOs, from elected and appointed officials through the state, talking about lending, expanding the job base, and moving Florida forward. Now, what I've heard from some of the folks on these trips, and what he found most rewarding, was taking people along on the bus, maybe hijacking them, bringing tellers, branch managers, personal bankers with them. And the ride along gave those people the chance to give Jamie feedback to help drive a better JPMorgan Chase. Now, this is for a guy that travels around the world a lot. It really says something, though, he'd get his team together on the Greyhound and move across America. But you know, that's what a leader should do, one whose business is rooted in the communities they serve. And I'd say Jamie does it with exquisite humility. I've had the privilege of leading our firm for 9 or 10 months. Jamie, I marvel at, leading his firm for a decade. He's built it into a global powerhouse, leading 260,000 JPMorgan Chase people while he grows in challenging economic and regulatory environments. He's a great leader of a firm that's rooted in American history for 200 years. It's my honor to welcome a wise and authentic CEO, Jamie Dimon. Joining Jamie on stage today is going to be Bill Ferguson, and he's the chairman and CEO of Ferguson Partners. He's also the chairman and CEO of FPL Advisory Group. Yeah. And what they do is they look for the best CEO and director leaders anywhere and help position them in the right firms. He conducts board assessments, succession planning assignments, and generally is at the right hand of many who can make change happen at the most important firms. He was at Russell Reynolds for a decade in their Chicago office, co-managing their national real estate business. Please give Bill as well a warm welcome to the event.
Well, Jamie, thank you. Welcome. Appreciate your coming this afternoon for sure. I thought what we would do is talk a little bit about the business environment out there and then segue into something that's near and dear to my heart, which is the subject of leadership. But it's been, I think, about 7 years since the global financial crisis. Be interested to get your perspective on the health of the financial sector today.
Right. So first of all, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Bill, thank you. Andrea, thank you. Well, the United States financial system is completely recovered, totally properly capitalized, making loans, doing all the things it's supposed to do. And I'm including banks, investment banks, life insurance, property capital, venture capital, the whole mosaic of financial companies, including a lot of new, I would call them non-bank financials, and a lot of them are legitimate businesses. And so the financial system around the world is not as recovered. Like the European system has a ways to go. America moved much quicker. The banks were better capitalized to begin with. The Federal Reserve took much more drastic action, and you see it here. Some of you might complain about not getting a loan here or there. I think mortgage credit is too tight for consumers, for the reps and warranty issues, but pretty much it's wide open. We don't hear complaints about people lack of getting credit, and the capital markets are also wide open.
Jamie, what do you see as far as the both the growth and the challenge in the global economy?
So the global economy, I'll just give you a quick little tour around the world. China, in my opinion, is going to meet its objectives. So when they say they're going to do 7% or something, they'll meet it. They're very smart. They have $4 trillion basically in the bank, mostly treasuries. So they have the financial assets. They move very quickly. They have serious problems. I mean, I think 5 years out and 10 years out, they need real market reform, real corruption reform, state-owned enterprise reform, and those three things are directly correlated. They have to broaden out the democracy. There's no developed nation in the world that isn't a democracy. There may be one or two exceptions, and so there will be bumps down the road, but it's not going to be a bump that derails the economy in the next year or two. Europe is the sick one. It's not sick with pneumonia. It's not, it's sick that it's not growing, and it's hard to do business there. All the problems are structural. I know Mario Draghi is trying to do great things. It's 17 nations trying to do the right stuff for good reason. The European Union, I think, was a unbelievable concept for human beings to try to accomplish, but it's hard for them to do all the things they need to do, particularly structural reform. So I think they're kind of stuck in, if we're lucky, a low-growth environment. And then you're going to have scary times, which is today. It's a little scary. People have reacted to the market. You'll have times where they take action and people are going to feel better. So Europe is one. Japan, Japan's been an enigma to me my whole life, literally almost my whole professional career. Though I think the leadership is now doing bolder and braver things, but they also have structural problems. Population going down, they want women to go to the workforce, but that's going to be a huge cultural change for them. Their immigration policy is none, zero. They allow some immigrant workers, and the United States, I'll give you the short run and the long run. Right now, the corporate sector's in great shape, middle market sector's in great shape, real estate's in good shape, small business is in better shape, the consumer's in good shape. The consumer debt and debt service ratios, which people were terrified about in 07, are back to where they were in 1985. Okay, wealth is way up, home prices are going up, housing is turning the corner, it's in short supply in certain markets. Household formation will eventually go up as people, we've added 10 million people working. There's no real weak spot here. So in my opinion, America's going to chug along at the 2 and 2.5%. It should be more. And I think it's a lot of bad policies why it's not more. Europe may slow it down a little bit. Ukraine will not slow it down. I think Russia's going to slow down Europe, and then slow down us a little bit. And to give you a long-run picture, the United States has the best hand that's ever been dealt. And I'd say that today. It's that we have the best military on the planet. We have the best universities on the planet. They're great universities overseas, but this is still the place for science, technology, engineering, math. We have great innovation from the factory floor to Steve Jobs, and innovation is improving productivity is embedded in America. We all try to make things better and quicker. It's not true around the world. We have very low corruption. We have the widest and deepest and most transparent capital markets the world has ever seen. And again, the whole mosaic, private equity, real estate, investment banks, non-banks, shadow banks, you name it. Great businesses, exceptional businesses. And again, you have some exceptional business in Japan and Europe and around the world, but America's still got the best. So I would say the long-term outlook for America is still very good. You know, I tell you, Warren Buffett bought his first stock in 1942. We had been in depression with 20% unemployment for 12 years. And you know the situation around the world at that point. So I'm a long-term bull in America. I think the short term will probably be okay. I should also point out, by the way, that we run the company to do well in good times and bad times. So it's not like if I'm wrong here, JPMorgan will suffer a lot. It won't. Yeah. Because we don't know what the future, we always are careful about predicting the future.
Jamie, what about the Middle East? You've got oil prices at, if not all-time lows, at least over the last 5 years. What's your view of what's going on in the Middle East?
Well, I don't think I've got any better insights than the rest of you. I met with some Saudi Arabian businesses recently, and they're doing fine. So is Abu Dhabi. So is Kuwait. So it's kind of a mixed bag. If you talk about the economy, if you talk about the politics in the region, well, obviously that's complicated and difficult and bad. Not going to derail the financial system. Oil prices, you would have to make a long list of who it's good for and who it's bad for. I would say net is probably a plus for American consumers. And it's the consumer whose income is being squeezed a little bit that this can put another $500,000 in their pocket. So you could argue it's a plus. It's not a plus for marginal oil producers, right. Which is, think of anyone who produces oil at $80 a barrel, or their cost is $70. So think of the Gulf of Mexico, certain oil sands and stuff like that. But it's not a negative. Or if we were sitting here and we had the reverse, the oil had gone from 110 to 170, we'd be talking about how bad that is for the global economy.
Right. Jamie, in the aftermath of the financial crisis, we had extensive regulations and reporting requirements that ultimately were implemented. What has been the real impact of these on JPMorgan Chase?
Let me first of all start by saying we needed something, that we had a real crisis, and there was a response, and the response was huge, and it's still taking place. So I think some are good. So if you ask me, like the basic ones, more capital, more liquidity, more transparency, more involved boards, active risk management committees, those are all basically good things for financial system. This financial system is really, really sound. And I think the regulators should take more credit for that. They should be out there saying that our system is solid, and it is. Some of the things have real effects, which you're going to feel too. I mean, some of the rules are very specific on liquidity, draws, how we deal with operating deposits, certain leveraged loans, and so it is affecting things in the marketplace. And I do think it's worse in Europe. Europe needs to do a little more deleverage. They need more capital. They weren't, some of the banks weren't as conservative in accounting. So I think it is there's been huge deleveraging. And we still think the European banking system have to deleverage a little bit, which obviously is not good for growth. Here, we're almost back to normal. I think if you look at 2009 and 2010 and 2011, it probably reduced growth a little bit. But I think real academics will have to look at that, years from now and study all the full effects. And here, I also think mortgage credit's too tight. So if you are a first-time buyer, if you had a credit problem before, if you're self-employed, it's just hard to get a mortgage. And it shouldn't be. And it's hard because of the litigation around it, and the reps and warranties, and a bunch of policies, which they're talking about changing, though it is 6 years later. I mean, they should have been changed 3 or 4 years ago.
So it's been a net positive on the global banking system, you'd say?
I think it's been a net positive in the U.S. banking system. It's probably slowed down some global growth a little bit, but I think the regulators would tell you if they were here, if it makes a better system with lower growth, they'd be very happy.
Okay. All leaders in financial services have had their struggles with the administration. How would you say the administration is doing to date? I'm a great believer in collaboration and compromise and
figure out the answer to things and stuff like that. Politics is a really tough thing. In a little bit I've been involved, it's just tough. So I'm sympathetic in some ways to all sides of the parties here. I wish they would just all go out and have a few scotches together and get to know each other a little bit and find some way to balance it. And I think the political system, I'll give George Bush credit, and Geithner and Paulson and President Obama, early on, they stopped America from getting far worse. I think that since then, so think of 2010, 2011, 2012, there's a series of things that, had they taken place, we'd be growing faster. And I can't sit here and blame either party. And by the way, both parties would probably agree with me. So immigration reform. Okay, immigration reform, I think it's a moral issue, but I also think that if we had immigration reform and Senator McCain and Senator Schumer came up with something that actually would probably pass both the Senate and the House, we would be growing 0.3% faster, maybe even 0.5, and for 10 years. That's a huge, over a 10-year period, that solves all problems. We've been talking about corporate tax reform. Both sides agree that having a tax, Bill Clinton was talking about having taxes at 35% when the rest of the world is 10% lower, either on gap rates or effective rates, or however you look at it, it's just bad for America. We're driving capital overseas. We're driving brains overseas. We're driving capital overseas. And the inversions is a piece of it. It's also true for foreign direct investment. It's true for companies investing, a new research and development center or a new subsidiary, and some of that's permanent. So corporate tax reform, I think intelligent infrastructure spending would have been a wise thing to do. And of course, the counter you would get from everybody who doesn't like that is that it'll just become a Christmas tree for political reasons in Washington, and that may be true, but in reality, proper investment in highways, grids, schools, hospitals, you should be able to project forward and do properly, and all those things would be great for growth. And they may happen. So my guess is if I was sitting here 5 years from now, something would have triggered some really good growth, and this kind of morose, sour attitude would be gone. And I do think part of the morose, sour attitude is due to income inequality. So, which I've studied, usually people just say things and they're not really true if you look at the facts, and then we paste policy on it. But if you look at the middle income and multiple ways, and look at tax changes and household formation changes and age and adjust for everything, middle income households have actually gone down. There are a lot more transfer payments, cash payments at the, at the bottom end, but I think that has led to a sour politics, which hurts everybody. And again, there are solutions for that too. The solutions aren't to say that companies can't compete for talent. The solutions would be more around jobs training, skills training, education, vocational training, better earned income tax credits, a whole series of policies that would help fix and alleviate the fact that middle income households are doing worse than they were doing 10 or 12 years ago.
Right.
And politics may not get better until that's fixed.
So what advice did the administration both take and not take from banking leaders during the recession?
Well, I think the advice, when I just spoke about all those things, I think that if you speak to a bunch of people in the administration, they want immigration reform. They would like to do capital tax reform. They'd like to do infrastructure spending. And so they would say they've taken it and they can't get it done. As opposed to that they haven't taken it. There were specific things which I won't get into in banking rules or mortgage rules or how certain things got treated that probably had a negative effect, more on banks than on you, but that's water under the bridge.
Okay. Jamie, talk to us a little bit about innovation to meet consumer demands. What initiatives and technologies are JPMorgan exploring?
Yeah, so innovation is an unbelievable thing.
It's what?
Unbelievable thing. And it's everywhere. And it's more today than it ever was before. So people who talk about what's the next wave that's going to change things, we had the light bulb, and then we had the electric engine, and then we had the car. It's everywhere. It's healthcare, nanotechnology, solar. Who would have thought about fracking, 10 years ago? There were only 2 people that I know of who were talking about it 10 years ago. And it's cumulative. It's so, the Apple iPhone wasn't just one invention. It was 10 years of people doing 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, touch screens, lithium batteries, powerful semiconductors, and that stuff is just starting. So it's everywhere, and every 10 years we're going to be blown away by something. And sometimes it's lots of little things on top of each other. It's not going to be like one technology. And for us, banks are huge users of technology. So if you look at banks today, you can deposit checks with this phone. You can move money. If you're a corporate treasurer, you can move money on this phone. 35 million of our clients do online banking. You can deposit checks at an ATM. It used to be, they were only for taking cash out. So we have huge technology. I forgot that 90% of the foreign exchange trading is electronic. And a lot of trading has moved to electronic trading. It's instantaneous, and the cost of it has come down. It's a tenth of what it was 20 years ago to trade almost anything, which is good for issuers and investors. And so we have to use it to serve them. So Apple Pay is something we just did. That's a piece of it where you're going to be able to. It's only at 200,000 merchants today, like physical locations, where all you got to do if you have your phone, your code in, or use your thumbprint, basically wave the phone and it acts like the credit card. And it's safer because it's going to have what we call tokenization. It will not use your credit card number. It'll have sent your credit card number to us. We'll have replaced it with a token that's been authorized. That token will make the payment, and think of it, it'll disappear. So it can't be stolen. It's safer for the merchant, it's safer for the consumer, it's safer for the bank. And so we think there'll be tons of things like that. Easier ways to move money, easier ways for corporate treasurers to do things, quicker. Even the things we're torturing with people today, like we have KYC. I'm sure your banks are torturing you over AML, KYC, certain things like that. We're going to try to automate a lot of that, so that there's a KYC, you could know your customer utility that can do it once for you, and it's usable by multiple banks, as opposed to you have to fill out the same form for 10 different banks. So we're going to come with different ways to use technology to serve our clients and to always do it cheaper and faster and better, where, when, and how they want.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about corporate social responsibility. JPMorgan has launched numerous initiatives relative to corporate social responsibility. You got your 100,000 jobs mission, the Global Health Initiative, among others. Why is this so important to you and so valuable to the bank?
Yeah. So remember, it's part of the heritage of almost all banks, and in particular Chemical, Chase, Bank One, First Chicago, JPMorgan. And think of it as, and this is the same way I think about customers, by the way, which is we want to be here permanently. Wherever we do business, we want people to say we are better off for JPMorgan Chase having been here. So when I go to Saudi Arabia or France or anywhere in Asia or any city, Austin, Texas, that they say we're better off for being here. Now, most of what we do is commercial, small business, consumer, middle market, real estate lending, things like that. But we participate in all those communities. We want our people to participate, and it's not just philanthropic. So we give away $200 million a year, which is like the 7th largest philanthropy giving of all philanthropies out there. But it's also our brain power and our knowledge. So we help cities and schools do jobs training. We've hired 7,000 veterans in this 100,000 jobs mission, which is now a 200,000 jobs mission. 7,000 veterans. And there are 1 million who are going to need jobs over the next couple of years. And we did it by not just saying, let's just hire veterans. We formed a group, we studied it, we do it at all levels in the company. We know how to bring them in, we train them, we give them help where they need it. We try to give them proper jobs. We try to place them properly so the retention goes up. So we're doing some unbelievable stuff in Detroit. So we sent a team into Detroit, not just to give money, to ask the mayor and the governor, who I think are doing an exceptional job, what could JPMorgan do that you need that's different? And they said, well, we're trying to rehab homes, but people won't make loans to rehab homes. And we don't know where all the homes are that need to be foreclosed. So we gave money to scope out all the properties so they know which ones to demolish and create a park or an enterprise zone, and which ones to rehab, have new communities. And then we gave kind of first loss money to a local bank to do a rehab loan. They're auctioning off these homes for $30,000, $35,000. They're very nice homes, but they need another $30,000 to replace the toilets and the copper and the wires and the lights, and that's just started. So And then we're doing the same thing for small business venture, and we're doing the same thing for, they're going to have a rail between uptown and downtown where, we did some of the seed funding for that. And that brings a university crowd into the city. And as you know, cities blossom with universities. And Wayne State is, I forgot, it's 2 miles away from downtown. And so, and the mayor and the governor love what we did. And we're an accelerant. And our 60 people are going back to seeing what's working and what's not working. So we like to be a good corporate citizen, in addition to trying to be just a great corporation doing our job for clients.
Right. Let's segue into the subject of personal leadership, if we can. If you could sit down with any leader, past or present, first of all, who would it be, and what one question would you ask of him or her?
That's a real tough one. I mean, it would probably be, and I think a lot of you would say the same, would be an Abe Lincoln. And just because I think that when I read everything he wrote, how he treated people, how he dealt with the problems he had, he's an amazing individual. And one of the things I love about Abe Lincoln is he never diminished other human beings. He never claimed that God was on his side. In fact, there's a great quote where some lieutenant says, we're going to win this war because God is on our side. And he said, son, let's hope that we're on the side of God. He was humble that way. And he didn't, unlike the politics today, he didn't excoriate the other side. He didn't, and he used his famous thing he used to do is like he would write a letter, kind of like saying what he wanted to say, and then put it in the drawer and forget it. So he could kind of get it out of his system and stuff like that. So I would have a million questions for him about how he got through it all in leadership and how he kept it all together during those, imagine those dark times. This is Civil War, the future of America, a lot of people dying. And of course, he lost a child while he was in office. And so.
Yeah. So he didn't push that send on the email prematurely.
No. We call that drunk bury.
Really?
Don't send emails after you've had a drink.
How about 2 drinks?
Yeah.
As you look into the future, how would you like to be remembered as a leader?
The funny thing about Wall Street is that, a lot of us know each other, and I know a lot of the New York real estate guys in this room, and obviously I see a bunch of JPMorgan Chase folks here. They have this attitude that somehow these Wall Street chieftains are just tough sons of bitches. It's all about money and how hard we are. And we're more like lovers. We want to compromise and get things done and make clients happy. And you gotta stand firm. You gotta be tough on certain issues. But when I think about it, I just want, when I'm done with JPMorgan Chase, and that people say, we're going to miss the son of a bitch, and that we're better off for him having been here. And he treated us with dignity, and he held our heads high in addition to his own, and he admitted his mistakes, and he admitted our mistakes, and wanted to get better all the time, and it wasn't, we'll never be perfect, and that's all. That's the best I could do to make it a better world. And when I do something different, maybe I'll get more involved in directly making a better world, but I think the best thing I can do is run a great company. Hire people, hire vets, serve clients, help you guys build your buildings, develop communities around the world. We are in 100 countries, and when I travel around, these countries love us being there. We bring them capital and brains and companies, and so in every country, I want them to feel that we've done that, and I've done my job, to make it just a better place while I was there.
Right, because if you look at how often you're quoted in the media, running one of the largest corporations in the world. People have certain perceptions of you as an individual. How do they get you wrong? How do they misperceive you?
Well, I think one of the big ones is what you see is what you get. I'm the same person privately, publicly. I say the same things in town halls that I say everywhere else, and I'm just trying to do the best I can. I don't like meanness. I like people to work together. I'll be tough on stuff. Like, if you are a jerk, I will tell you, you're acting like a jerk, or you're selfish, or you're a politician, or you know, and you know, we have to force the company to act properly and stuff like that. So, but you know, for the most part, you know, I every now and then, you know, when I was younger, because he would yell every now and then, and I remember my secretary 10 years ago saying, "I've never ever heard you yell." You know, but it just gets repeated over and over. Then she said, "Oh, that was that one time." You know, and there was one time that I remember where I did yell at the top of my lungs at someone on the phone, but during the middle of the crisis, and I think for good reason. But it's just very different than people act. You know, and it's not just corporate folks. It's business people. People get characterized, you know, all the time. And so does media sometimes, and so does everybody. There's constantly, we overdo it. We don't allow human beings to have the full breadth of being a human being, you know, like, what's it like to be a person, and, you know, do you get scared, and do you avoid conflict? Well, of course I avoid conflict sometimes, because I don't like it either. You know, so the people who work with me, you know, sometimes they laugh when they see an article that says he's decisive and he makes all these decisions, because they see the other side of that, which is, I'll say, "Hey, Bill, could you send me that thing again, and can we do it again, and let's get like 3 more people in the room, and let's think this over. You really sure?" Like the indecision, the fear about making the wrong decision, which, you know, if I make some wrong decisions I make could be devastating for individuals of the company. And so they see that. They don't see the exact decisiveness. They do see the rigor we bring to it and the discipline, but not, you know, not like we're not guessing at decision making. We actually are constantly unpeeling that onion and trying to figure out the right thing to do.
So looking back over your career, and we did put a little bit of a career profile on you with on all the chairs in the audience, what would you say, what events influenced you the most?
You know, I think a lot of what you are, you know, you did get from your parents, and, you know, you're part of your basic morality and humility, and you know, some people change and some don't. And John Weinberg has this great quote. He used to run Goldman Sachs years ago, that when someone gets a big job, some grow into it and some swell into it. and I've seen that too. And it's amazing. You give some people power, what happens to them? Yeah. It's truly amazing. And they actually think that somehow all of a sudden they are God's gift to mankind, and they do know all the answers, and they don't have to listen to what you have to say, and you couldn't possibly be wrong about something, and they make snap judgments about people, and they have a very narrow view about who's good or who's bad. They can't see the strengths of that individual versus that one. And so I think a lot of it is that, but you learn the whole way. I learned by watching tons of people. George Ross is in the room. I remember George Ross doing due diligence on real estate when we bought Travelers. I mean, that's due diligence. I mean, you know, knowing what with the boiler, the environmental conditions, that the roof has a crack in it, you know, like, because he did due diligence on a portfolio we bought from we bought Travelers Insurance, and so you learn from everybody along the way, and hopefully you continue to do that your whole life. And you also learn from some people what not to do. There are a lot of things I've seen that it just makes me cringe when I see people treat someone that way or make a decision that way, because I just think it's a bad way to do it.
Right. Yeah. And then also looking over your career, what would you say has been your most important?
Like you've never seen me publicly go after an executive who left the company, even if they're going after me, ever.
Right.
You know, and I've always had the attitude that, look, you know, if I've asked someone to leave and they've been at the company for 20 years, I offer them a party. That other people want to say, thank you for what you've done. I may not think you deserve your job anymore. I may think there's time for a change, but the company, and I've done that sometimes they, you know, tell me to take a hike, but I never treat them rudely. Even when there are quotes in the press that I think are just complete lies, forget it. Let them go on with their lives. You know, I have a job, they don't, and you know, No, I meant that respectfully. That they're in a more difficult position,
you did.
And there's no reason for me to make it harder for them. You know, and you know, I've been there. I was fired once, and you know, it's just a terrible thing when people at a company start going after you, you know, over a bunch of stuff because it makes them feel better. Right. And you know, just move on and treat people with respect.
Right. Looking back, what would you say has been your most important leadership lesson?
there are many, so I'll list a few. Making people decisions is where you can make the biggest mistakes or hurt an organization the most. So if you can, sometimes you do battlefield promotions, you have no choice. I got to Bank One, I was there by myself, I made a lot of changes. I didn't know I was making all the right changes. Now it's a much more thorough process. We make fewer mistakes. It's far less, damaging to the company. A lot of people get involved. And it's not necessarily committee-based, but it's far better done. I think having humility. People say to me, "Well, Jamie, you're not a humble person." I'm not. I don't have a humble personality, but I think humility is that you treat everyone properly, from the mailroom person to the CEOs, and I do. I treat them the same. And every Christmas, I give personal gifts to the people who clean the bathrooms. And I invite people, I invite them into my office and thank them what they do for the company, and try it one day. They'll say a lot of them cry, and they've never been thanked by the chairman. There are these invisible people who do stuff in the middle of the night, and it gives me great joy. And they're so proud of the company, and they're so proud of what we do, and and they feel part of it. And it changes a company, by the way. So you can walk into a company, feel a place where no one likes each other, like in the elevator. And then in another place, in the elevator, they're talking to you, they pat me in the back, they say hi to the receptionist says, "What can I do to help you?" And another company, it's nasty. The receptionist treats the visitors like the enemy, like you're interrupting their book. And so, I just think I've learned that you should do that and do it right, and there's no reason not to, and it's costless and it's the right thing to do.
Right. You've made a lot of hard choices over your career and along the way. What choice do you not regret?
Well, two big ones I made. I joined Sandy Weil out of business school at American Express. I don't regret that. I had Ed went through the job. I had a lot of jobs. I had two companies. So that commercial credit bought all those other companies. I never left until I got fired. And then Bank One was my second company. So I'm kind of like, I put the jersey on and that's it. I'm not a hired gun. I'm not a hired hand. I have no interest in doing that. These are my brothers and sisters and friends, and I owe them everything. I'm going to do everything I can to help everyone in the company and our clients, stuff like that. And so one hard decision was going to Bank One, which Andrea recruited me at. I think it was hard for them too, and thank God Andrea got aboard to hire a 42-year-old, maybe tough New York. I was never an investment banker, but Wall Street type to run a Midwest bank, and the hard part was just moving, taking on a big troubled company. My kids were like 12, 10, and 8. But it was a great experience to move, and I love Chicago, and I think the family was better off for it. The company had enough good stuff there that we were able to fix it. And the second one was merging with JPMorgan. So now you had two companies, neither of which was a great performer yet. So some people thought we were putting together two troubled companies. They weren't troubled, but neither was performing among the best in any of its businesses. And mergers are really tough. And now I knew I was signing up Bank One, and I don't normally feel anxiety, but I remember the board had voted, both sides. I'm signing the document. I'm alone in a room, and knowing that what I'm about to subject, the 70,000 people who work at Bank One to, a merger, and what it does to management teams and layoffs and consolidations, and I don't regret it, because I think JPMorgan Chase today is an exceptional company, unduplicatable, with fabulous people, and we've hired tons of people. And every city that I got complaints in, because I used to go to every city where we had to lay people off and explain it and apologize, we have probably higher head counts than we had before. Hired more people. So Chicago, Indianapolis, Dallas, you name it, we're respected in those towns, and we're bigger than we were before, and more important.
Jamie, one last question. This session is about leadership resilience. You and your family have faced a very difficult challenge with your cancer diagnosis. I think we would all benefit from not only what you've learned, but what's given you the strength and the courage to move forward.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you what I know. I think it's a journey, and I'm still kind of going through the journey, and what I say today might be different than what I say in 6 months. First of all, it's terrifying, and to hear it. And it's, in some ways, it's very solitary to go through it, you know, because you're sitting in those radiation rooms, and on the other hand, you got the village, your family, you know, and who's going through the same goddamn thing in maybe a worse way, because and you feel like you subjected them to it, and it's hard. So it's really hard to family, and I didn't learn that that's the most important. My family's always been the most important thing to me, and I've always said family here, country right below it, JPMorgan here, and I really mean it, like in my own moral system, you know, and because, you know, your family you brought into the world and you owe them everything, and I love the United States of America. Now, JPMorgan, I want to make the best it can. I spend 80 hours a week, so you can't spend a lot of time, you know, my kids are off doing their own thing, and I think early on, I mean, it's just literally, I wouldn't call it courage, I wouldn't call it anything like that, because you have no friggin' choice. And, you know, you just wanted to start and deal with it and just one step ahead of the other. That's it. Through all those times, you know, and of course you feel worse and worse and worse, and both emotionally and physically, and, you know, and physically it knocks the hell out of you, and just one step in front of the other. Like, I went to work, not every day, I'm not a fanatic. I went to work almost every day, other than the days I had to spend a full day in the hospital, which is quite a few, but I didn't do anything. I didn't see anyone, and there were times, I mean, I literally sleep 3 or 4 times on the couch. So I wasn't trying to be a Superman. It's just, you know, my alternative was sitting at home and watching TV, like the news, like ISIS, you know, and I could kind of get myself, even at the worst moment, a little preoccupied sometimes, because the management team was there, and they were coming in, and, you know, they had an off-site without me, and they came in and briefed me, and they had made a bunch of decisions, and they were kind enough to take me through them quickly, you know, like, so I was doing things in like 30 minutes that I normally spend 3 hours on, because I just couldn't spend the 3 hours, and now, you know, now I'm on the other end, and the prognosis is very good. It hasn't changed what I want to do with my life yet. You know, could it? It could. You know, I still love what I do, and I still have to do something. I still want to make it a better world, and I still really believe that making JPMorgan Chase a great company makes America and the world a better world. We're helping people all over the place, of all different sorts. I think when I'm done with this, I may do it more directly. So there are people who've done unbelievable things, like, I don't want to go on a charitable board just to raise money for them, but there might be a charity that needs my help, that needs someone like me to help them become better and fix it, you know, or something that you've fallen in love with, and there are things I will do. Like, I'll always do a little bit of business. I love to teach, so maybe I'll do a little bit of teaching of some sort, and so we'll see. And I'm still, you know, you just still wake up every day with that reminder that you have cancer, or had, you know, and that's quite a thing to have, and maybe in some ways it's that blessing too, because you as some of my friends have told me many times, every day is a little different, and so.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, give Jamie Dimon a big round of applause.
Thank you very much.